Kneel before Zod!
You can't go! All the plants are gonna die!
I'm gonna take a bath.
Bad dates. I'll alert the media.
Boys, keep off the moors.
It's evil! Don't touch it!
The name's Pliskin.
No more hangers!
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we're rewatching the 80s so you don't have to. We'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in chronological order, overanalyzing what you've seen and spoiling what you haven't. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jessie Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today we're discussing Rollover, released December 11th, 1981. It was written by David Shaber, based on a story by Shaber, Howard Kohn, and David Weir, directed by Alan J. Pakula, and released by Warner Brothers. Jane Fonda and producer Bruce Gilbert allegedly developed the original story, but get no corresponding credits in the film. Paul Newman and Jeff Bridges were pursued for the male lead, but Newman was instead attached to next week's film, Absence of Malice, and Bridges turned this down to do Tron.
Oh man, those
Good
are
move.
Yeah, those are both really good moves.
Very smart.
Yeah.
Not laterals at all. Orion budgeted the film at $16 million, expecting a blockbuster return on their money, but the film only made $6 million back.
Why? Not why did it make $6 million? Why would it cost 16?
I have no idea.
I guess because there's some interesting sets.
Yeah. I mean, maybe shooting at the World Trade Center was expensive. I know when we talked about it for The Wiz, that was like one of their hardest set pieces to secure.
But I don't think it was necessary.
I agree.
Any building would have been fine.
Yeah.
Also, that they went in thinking, this is going to be a blockbuster hit. This is going to be the most amazing.
You know what everybody loves is riveting financial stories.
Right. And I mean, well, we'll get there, but I have my problems with the climax of the film too.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. We start picture in the offices of Borough National Bank, panning across a wall of financial figures tracking foreign markets. More and more boards light up as we spin around the room, and the lights come up to illuminate desks and computers. A cleaning lady pushes a cart out the door, and a world map lights up on the back wall with international clocks across the top. We dissolve from the empty room to the same angle on the office in full swing, crowded with traders speaking loudly on phones. A piece of paper is handed to the man supervising the floor, and he advises another man to announce that the dollar is sinking and they need to dump $100 million in exchange for foreign currencies. We cut to a press conference with Maxwell Emery, chairman of New York Bank, played by Hume Cronyn. He's being asked about today's losses and blames Borough's unfortunate position with the U.S. dollar. Borough continues dumping the dollar all over the world for the entire trading day. No wonder these people had to be on coke 24/7. They're just screaming nonstop for their full shift.
I don't know how any business. I mean, I understand. This is very much like the stock market floor type situation with just a crowd of people screaming over one another. I mean, they're all on phones with other exchanges and banks and stuff, I'm sure. But I don't actually understand how these sorts of transactions take place, especially pre-computers. And I realize they have computers here, but
right. But most of it's just happening verbally over the phone.
How did this actually work?
Yeah.
How was there real-time stock market before computers? I don't actually understand.
Well, and so much stuff was handwritten, on papers that were handed off. You watch Trading Places,
right?
Which is I guess after this even, right?
Yeah, it's 83, I think.
So I mean, this seems more high tech than Trading Places.
Yeah,
which seemed more realistic.
Right.
There was a really great clip that just circulated around recently
with Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Where he's on the New York Stock Exchange floor and he's just walking through this crowd of people screaming prices and sales numbers, and he's just like, "This is terrifying. These people are Satan."
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not wrong.
Yeah. First New York Bank offers Borough a minor bailout of $40 million to slow the tanking of the dollar and calm the market. We see Chairman Emery on the news that night speaking directly to the people to assure them that today's fluctuations are nothing to overreact to. A reporter mentions the consolidation of wealth in Arab oil-producing nations, and again, Emery says the market unites us, and their gain is everyone's gain. We see the World Trade Center at night and push into the office of Charlie Winters, chairman of Winterchem Enterprises. He looks over some paperwork, and suddenly a man peeks out from behind his office curtains. The man behind the curtain stabs Charlie Winters hard in the chest before dropping him face down on his desk. His blood is seen spilling over a bank statement, instructing a transfer to First New York account 21214. The camera tilts up to reveal more blood spatter on a framed photo of Winter's young wife, Lee, played by Jane Fonda. Down at street level, a man looks up at the same building, and we see an office light go out. This is Sal Naftari, played by Bob Gunton. We cut to a party in a ballroom with a model of an enormous humpback whale hanging from the ceiling. Hubbell Smith, played by Kristofferson, crosses the party to refresh some drinks. On the sidelines, a man advises Emery that Hubbell Smith would never take an assignment to Borough National to clean up their mess, but Emery insists that money will change his mind. Emery approaches Smith, and Smith already knows he's looking for a fixer.
Kristofferson says, "You rode up on your white horse."
Why am I saying what way?
I sure feel sorry for the poor son of a bitch who tries to turn that mess around.
Smith tries to shut the conversation down, but Emery essentially calls him a chicken and points out whoever fixes Borough will be celebrated as a hero. A man interrupts the proposal asking where Lee Winters is and shares news that her husband has just been murdered. We see Lee pulled aside and informed before she breaks down. The camera swings around the party with an ominous score to show all the happy people and then tilts up to the eye of the whale statue. Like, the whale sees all. Naftari is woken in bed by a phone call from Emery informing him of the man's death. We see a news broadcast on Lee Winters at her husband's funeral. It turns out Lee worked primarily as an actress until she gave up the job to marry a billionaire industrialist. The location reporter wonders aloud who will become the company's new chairman. Coincidentally, a decade after this film's release, Jane Fonda would retire from acting upon marrying television producer Ted Turner. We see a man named Jerry Fewster watching the story over breakfast with his family. The man walks to his home office and retrieves a file on Borough National and sees the same payment instructions pointed toward account 21214. We see Hubbell Smith walking the floor at Borough. He is led to his new office by the man in charge. Hubbell asks for a lot of paperwork on the man's way out because he wants a complete picture of their problems. After a glance of the numbers, he deduces all the problems they've been trying to keep under wraps.
Well, we may have to tighten our belt. Try it around your neck.
If they can't scrape together 3 or 4 million profit in the short term, they will default on an upcoming dividend, and then it's over. Hubbell suggests Winterchem and learns that they've already hit the legal borrowing limit. Regardless, they meet with them for lunch the next day. Winterchem announces that by tightening their belt, they can avoid further borrowing, but Lee, the chairman's widow, is offended at the implication that her late husband's company should start cannibalizing itself so soon after his passing.
So this is the point of the movie where I'm just like, I have no idea what's happening.
Yeah.
Like, this bank's in trouble for something, but I don't know what.
They are lying about their holdings. They don't have enough liquidity to keep doing business.
But they're still lending money or they're borrowing money?
They have to pay out dividends like quarterly
right now
to
they're
stockholders.
they're exchanging stocks.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So they don't necessarily have that cash on hand. They have that quantity of money circulating within the stock exchanges.
All right.
So if something comes due, if somebody says, give me all of my money, they don't have the reserves to pay it out.
But in this particular instance, they have to pay dividends to stockholders who are just getting a cash award for an increase in stock price.
Why would they be lending money?
Because they can lend out $100 million that they don't have, but they're lending out $100 million to make $5 million in interest very quickly, so that they have the interest in cash that they can say, here's this money, and then presumably the people who they trust to pay them back will pay back the rest of the 100, and they don't lose anything by making the $5 million. But they can't even loan to Winterchem because they're already maxed out.
It's wrong. You can't cut back on this company and expect it to ever grow again. The replacement cost would be astronomical.
Lee, I'm sure we're grateful for the interest you've taken in Winterchem, all the public relations time you put in for the company. And I know how you must feel, especially now that Charlie's gone.
Henry, don't patronize me.
Do you guys recall the last time we saw the widow of an executive at a major company overstepping her symbolic position on the board in an effort to make official decisions for the company?
Is it Mommy Dearest?
That's right.
Trying to sweep the poor little widow under the carpet? Well, think again. I'm on the board of directors of this lousy company.
Well, we assumed that with your husband gone, you would no longer want to be on the board.
Al and I helped build Pepsi to what it is today. I intend to stay with it.
The Winterchem execs ask how Lee intends to keep the company running without more capital, as she points to an investment opportunity in Spain, a chemical plant that could turn them a tidy profit. The execs spell out their discomfort with the suggestion, and Hubbell stands from the table to use a phone across the restaurant to speak with Lee in private. He gives her more factors to consider in the Spain deal. Later, she finds him in his office and answers all his concerns off the top of her head to prove she's more prepared than he gave her credit for. Hubbell follows Lee home to raise a toast to her future at Winterchem, since she's clearly done her homework.
It sounded more like, because it didn't happen instantly.
Right.
It feels more like I came back and told you the cool comeback that
Yeah.
I wanted to say
Yeah.
in the moment.
What is that called? Esprit d'escalier or something like that, where it's like staircase wit when you come up with the perfect comeback
line
later.
Yeah.
He's like, oh crap, I gotta get down to his office. Where is his office? Kicks in his door. That's what she said.
I came up with it. She thinks he has too much faith in her and that they'll never let her pursue this action, but Hubbell offers to make it a reality.
It'd be funny, wouldn't it, if the banker helped the widow walk off with the chairmanship?
He tells her he can connect her with the $500 million loan she needs to acquire the chemical plant, and that her fellow board members will have no choice but to go along at that point. So now he's offering outside of Borough National to make this $500 million loan that he'll be able to get cash out of her to cover Borough's losses.
And then he says the most romantic thing ever. Why don't you get me my drink?
Yeah.
I was like, Jesus, just get your own damn drink. Bar's over there.
So even at this point, like, he's not earnestly wanting to help her.
I think he is. I think he cares about her, and I think he actually wants... He can tell that she's a professional and that she's intelligent, so he's happy to do business with her.
Sure.
But it also does happen to help him out. It helps both of them out. It's mutually advantageous.
Mm-hmm.
He tells her he can connect her with the $500 million loan she needs to acquire the chemical plant, and that her fellow board members will have no choice but to go along at that point. Because Borough is at the loaning limit, he'll have to coordinate through a third party and collect a 1% fee, slightly more than the upcoming dividend shortage. The board convene without her and agree not to budge on control of the company. They call her in, and we cut right to Lee and Hubbell coordinating the loan. Hubbell sets up a fake-out to make it look like Lee is selling her stock to a Japanese conglomerate hell-bent on acquiring Winterchem. Lee arranges a lunch with the Japanese owner, and Hubbell makes a simultaneous lunch at the same restaurant with other members of the board to sell the scheme. The board surrender on the Spanish plant, and they move forward, bringing in the big loan for it. Hubbell also lies to the board that he'll keep an eye on Lee for them.
They call him, and he just puts them on speakerphone while Lee is in the room with them.
Right, yeah. Lee is approached somewhere by Jerry Fewster, the man who watched Charlie's funeral on the news over breakfast. He asks her if Charlie ever mentioned him, but she doesn't seem to recognize the name, and he backs off immediately, relieved to be anonymous.
Yeah.
Why would you bring this up if you didn't want to be implicated?
Oh my God, this is the stupidest. It's like, has he ever mentioned to Mr. Fewster? It's like, no, I don't think so.
What'd you say your name was? Nothing, never mind, it doesn't matter. I don't know why I said anything.
Yeah, and then she walks up 2 desks. It's like, who is that guy? Oh, that's Mr. Fewster. And he looks back like, shit.
Really should have done this somewhere else.
I feel like this is the 6th grade crush kind of scenario.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you send your friend.
Will you go to prom with me? Who is this from?
It's like
nobody, it doesn't matter.
You do the little thing where like you flip the thing 4 ways and then you have to unfold part of it.
It says we're going to have 6 kids. Who are you? A nearby henchman type tells Fewster that if Lee ever talks to him again, he is to report to this man immediately.
We know he's evil because he's wearing a single black glove.
Right. Hubbell stops by Lee's place to pick her up for what looks like a date. He wraps her in a fur coat by the door, and they are quickly making out. He follows her upstairs to her room. We cut to them arriving fashionably late to a dinner party that night. Lee is sat between Emery and Sal Naftari. She and Hubbell keep making eyes at each other across the table, and Emery notices. We hard cut to Hubbell and Naftari playing racquetball. Naftari represents the Arab investors loaning the $500 million to Lee. He says Lee will have to meet with them on their own turf, and we cut to a tent in the desert. They all eat from platters together with their hands without speaking.
And she's like taking a piece of meat and she's just like squeezing all the juice out of it before she puts it in her mouth. Like, is that what you do?
I don't know what you do. It seems like everyone's watching her like she's doing it wrong, whatever she's doing, but I don't know if it's just because she's a woman.
Was it the part of the rice? Because it was on a bed of rice, and I think she was smushing the rice to keep it together as she put it in her mouth.
Yeah. And they were definitely staring at her because she's a woman.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's like you invited her here.
Well, I'm actually shocked that they're even willing to do a deal with her.
Yeah. I mean, if they think that they can take advantage of her.
Sure. Which they can.
Right. Next, they're brought to a building in the city where they watch investors pray toward Mecca.
I thought we had an appointment.
Allahu Akbar. This is an appointment.
Allahu Akbar.
When the terms of the contract are discussed, Lee seems to learn for the first time that her shares of Winterchem stock have been put up as collateral for the loan. On the way back to America, she voices her discomfort at relying on Burrow when she's always maintained her personal independence in the past.
See, I really disliked this moment because up until this moment, I felt like they were trying to put her off as like she is fairly knowledgeable.
Yeah, she should have been on top of this, and she should have seen any fine print that indicated that she would be putting up this
not just
collateral.
Like fine print, but just not be an idiot. Nobody's going to give $500 million without some sort of assurance
right
against this loan. And it's like, what do you have? That's literally all you have that would have any value close to that.
Yeah, and she's only uncomfortable with it now because if Burrow fucks up their half of the deal, then she's lost all of her Winterchem stock by no fault of her own.
Right, it's out of her hands. But I feel like they've set her up to be smart enough to know this stuff before she gets into the deal, and now it feels like that's all falling apart, and that's frustrating to me.
Yeah. He invites her to back out if she likes because nothing is set in stone yet.
But if you think the only thing we've been doing together is business, one of us is a fool.
She calls her office and accepts the deal. We cut to Lee and Hubbell playing football in a park, like last married couple in America style. Why is this happening?
Damn it! That was gonna be my my deal last time. Do you remember when our leading couple was playing football at a park?
There you go. And then we're back in the offices of Burrow National. For whatever reason, the Arab investors have pulled all of their money out of the market, and they're just letting it sit interest-free in an account, meaning Burrow can't make anything off it either. And Hubbell calls Sal to confirm this is what they want. After the call, Sal speaks to the owner of the account, and Emery is here to express Hubbell's concern that this kind of a withdrawal could manipulate the market into a panic. The investor claims he's just trying to protect his investment, but it seems more like intentional sabotage of the market from the outside.
You're playing with the end of the world, you know.
The end of the world, as you know it.
Hubbell orders his floor managers to make up the gap in the market that the Arab investor pulled out of. Hubbell's second-in-command, Roy Lefcourt, leaves the room to make a phone call just as the dollar starts officially tanking and clients start selling too. Hubbell finds Roy on the phone with the Federal Reserve to report what's going on.
Hang up that phone, Roy. Help me, God, I'll tear it out of the wall.
We're going to lock David Ershon in the Federal Reserve. I'm sorry, he still doesn't get what that is.
Hubbell promises that by acting fast and smart, they can smooth over this whole issue and the feds will never have to know. Roy points out that that would be illegal, and Hubbell explains that if they admit what they've already done, that Roy will never work again in this town anyway. The dollar continues sinking out on the floor, and Hubbell asks for a moment to confer with Lee. Later that night, Lee visits her deceased husband's office and sits behind his desk. She dumps out his cigars into a waste bin and finds a small cassette tape tucked under them. She pops it into a small tape player and listens to the recording. It's her husband on the phone with Jerry Fewster. Fewster informs her husband of a discovery he's made regarding the operations of Burrow National. There's a specific account, 21214, that money is being siphoned into. At this point, Fewster asks for the recording device to be disabled and the audio cuts out.
Now, I perfectly understand him recording and keeping this in this location. Her stumbling across it just seems a little odd that she goes, "What's in this box of cigars?" "Oh, it's cigars. Throw them away."
Well, I thought she picked one up and saw that they were falling apart, like they were literally old, so she was trashing them. Because she didn't know hot dogs trick. You can just dip them in some alcohol and then smoke them. Lee heads to Burrow and finds Hubbell working way after hours with his lead bankers on the floor. She turns to leave just as a fax comes through from the London branch with the opening of the UK market. The Arab investor is depositing $9 million of the $95 million that they pulled out yesterday, so the dollar should make something of a recovery today. The last $5 million is ordered transferred to the same account from Lee's recording, 21214. Doesn't seem like they're being very secretive of it, though.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like everyone keeps saying 21214 and leaving that paperwork out on their desk all over the place.
It's just an account number. I mean,
I know, but it's
nothing...
like that's the clue that's leading everyone down this path.
Yeah, I guess. It's not that secretive to be like, I would like to make a withdrawal. Put it in my account.
Yeah. But I also wouldn't be like, hey, my name's Jerry Fewster. Anybody ever say Jerry Fewster's a bad guy?
Yeah.
You guys know anything about a Jerry Fewster? Never mind. Forget my name, please. Sorry, I said it 3 times just now.
I feel like what this movie needed was someone going through the account numbers, and it got to like 21213 and then just went 21215.
Sure, yeah.
Like that account doesn't exist for some reason, but money keeps going into it. Something to let us know that, oh, this is some kind of secret illegal account.
Well, but I think
I definitely shouldn't have said it was illegal.
I think part of the point, though, is that it's what they're doing isn't technically illegal.
It's just very shady.
Yeah.
It's just shady. The only people who are actually doing anything wrong here, potentially, is the bank not holding proper reserves.
Right.
And the murderer.
Well, okay, yeah, that guy too.
but more so the bank.
Who's the real criminal here?
Hubbell spends all night researching the account, and the mystery only deepens when he finds other large transactions. He kicks his way into Lee's bedroom with champagne and glasses, and they make love. The next day, Lee calls Mr. Fewster to have a conversation about the recording she found. They meet in a parking lot.
Yeah. When she says, oh, I'll meet you in a parking lot? Yeah, that sounds fine.
That sounds perfect. Yep.
No! What are you talking about?
So, come unarmed? Got it. Right off the bat, Fewster refuses to cooperate with her, even when she levels that she found the tape and it's enough to get him in trouble. There's nothing she can do to bribe him because the other team isn't limited to punishing him financially.
If it's your job you're worried about, Wintercam will find you something.
You don't understand.
All I knew was that Borough National was in trouble, that it had something to do with this account and some Arab euro dollars. But what I didn't know was how big this must be. How desperate they are to keep it all secret.
The people behind this conspiracy bribed him with a low-interest loan, and now if he brings them down, he'll go to jail with them, or worse.
Worse?
Miss Winters, please, just leave it.
I can't leave it. I need your proof.
Your husband couldn't leave it, and look what happened to him.
Charlie, are you saying this had something to do with Charlie's death?
Fewster cries for a moment and seems to come to a decision to cooperate, but he needs time to collect his notes on the matter and suggests they reconvene at a local Dunkin' Donuts. But anyone who's ever seen a movie or even heard half of a story knows that Fewster will not make their second date.
Yeah.
At home, Fewster retrieves his notes from a filing cabinet and then stuffs them all in a burning fireplace. He starts his car in the garage with the door closed and gasses himself to death.
But again, these documents don't prove anything. Like, because these are available. Anyone could call these documents up, as we will find out. These documents are readily available.
Well,
they're readily available to the people who have a vested interest in hiding them.
Right.
This would be the opposite of that. This would be a person who could be providing this, bringing it to light, sending it to a journalist or something.
But even so, if someone would look at it and goes, oh, well, these are just transactions.
Yeah, but he said himself that they wanted to keep this secret. They wanted to keep the account secret. Lee drives by Fewster's house hours later, just in time to see a pair of EMTs load a body bag into an ambulance. Now, at this point, she doesn't know that he killed himself. For all she knows, someone killed him when he got home.
Right.
Hubbell arrives at First National Bank and heads up to Emery's office after hours. For some reason, security just waves him in, and in the dark, he uses one of Emery's computers to look into the nefarious account number. Emery has ingeniously left a handwritten book of passwords on the desk, and Hubbell is quickly logged in, and just as quickly the computer kicks him out.
Maybe not quickly enough.
Yeah.
He tries to log in like 10 times.
Because the computer fully shuts down every time he enters the wrong password. But it only takes him 3 tries to get it going. Downstairs, Emery arrives, and the night watchman has changed out with another man, so nobody informs Emery that Hubbell is in his office. Hubbell finally gets into 21214 and finds and prints a list of transactions in the last month. He barely gets the paper out of the printer before Emery enters the office, and he's forced to hide. When Emery and another man close themselves in a separate room of the office, Hubbell sneaks out into the night.
Not a very fancy section of the office. Like, this is like Emery's office. Like, you walk in and it's just like a very tight, cramped room.
Yeah.
Later, we'll see he has a really nice office, but this is like the
this is where his secretary would sit.
Yeah, but it seems like if you're inviting someone to your office and this is the first thing that they see, like
it looks pretty cramped.
Yeah, like this is where they would wait for you to come into your office.
It looks like Bender's apartment.
And the fact that his when he wants
and
to
the closet is huge.
Well, the fact that he wants to use his computer terminal, he has to go into another cramped room that's not decorated at all.
He keeps the computer in there because it hums so loud.
It's like, I can't sleep in here. Why are you sleeping in your closet?
Lee finds Hubbell reading the printout in her apartment. She hugs him tight and begins to tell him about Mr. Fewster when she notices the account number all over Hubbell's printouts, and we get an abrasive musical sting on the track.
Something awful happened in Washington.
What were you doing in Washington?
She aborts her plan to discuss Fewster, assuming Hubbell is working in tandem with the baddies. In the middle of the night, Lee slips discreetly out from under him and moves upstairs to read the printouts. She sees dozens of multi-million-dollar deposits into an Arab bank. The next day, Hubbell goes to speak with Emery about his finding on the account. Hubbell accuses Emery of stationing him at Borough just to facilitate that transfer and not to save the bank. Emery tries his best to convince Hubbell that whatever nefarious dealings he has with the Arab investors are coordinated for the good of the global economy. If the Arab investors withdrew their money at the rates they wished to, it would tank the dollar, so they find a happy medium wherein everybody can turn a profit and assets can be converted from currencies to gold without causing a panic on the market. Emery warns that even reporting what the Arabs are doing to the feds could spook them into pulling everything and killing the stock market overnight.
Then you'll see a worldwide depression that'll make the 1930s look like a kindergarten. In 2 months, you'll have bread lines in Detroit, riots in Pittsburgh. In 6 months, you'll see grouse right over Rodeo Drive, and Michigan Boulevard, and Fifth Avenue, and I won't have done it, Hub. You will.
No, you will have done it.
No, yeah, you did it. All I did was open the box. You were the one who killed your cat.
Yeah.
Emery claims that, at least the way things are going, responsible people are monitoring and controlling the moves. As soon as the secret's out, nothing is predictable from there. Nothing can be controlled.
Believe me, Hub. The dollar will hold. Believe me. The system will be fine, providing nobody panics.
We cut to Lee speaking with Sal Naftari in his office, asking him to reach out to the Arab investors he represented in the negotiations and inform them that the secret of their manipulations is out. She's offering her personal silence in exchange for the renegotiation of her Winterchem contract to take her personal shares of the company off the collateral chopping block. As proof of her knowledge, she mentions the account number. She claims to have solid evidence in a safe place with a dead man switch if they decide against cooperating. Later that night, Lee is dressing for a party when Hubbell calls to say he's just getting into town and a bit exhausted. She tells him to just go home and rest, and he invites her to meet somewhere alone soon. It occurs to her that the Arabs might have hired him as an assassin, and she asks her housekeeper to have the locks changed immediately. We see Hubbell step out of a taxi at home and then change his mind and head straight to Lee's place. But it's only been a few minutes, so the locks haven't been changed, and he tells the housekeeper he will wait here for Lee. While he waits, he intercepts a phone call from Sal Naftari's secretary, inviting Lee to a meeting with the Arab investors.
He asked me to say that he's been in touch with the other party in regards to the 21214 matter, as Mrs. Winters requested, and they suggest a meeting at 11 tomorrow.
11 tomorrow.
They don't say where.
Yeah, they don't even say AM or PM.
Yeah. Just sometime tomorrow.
Or a time zone. Now, Hubbell thinks Lee is working with the Arab investors, just like she thinks he is. Why would Naftari let his secretary divulge such important details to an anonymous third party?
Right. Yeah. Well, because again, like...
Nobody cares what this account is.
I actually... Okay, here's the thing I really don't understand. Now, the Arab investors are slowly transferring their assets to a different account, transferring it to gold.
Right.
But what they're doing isn't illegal.
Correct.
Right. But it's going to cause problems with the liquidity of the U.S. market.
Right. As soon as they're done and they don't care anymore, presumably the dollar could or would tank at some point.
And it wouldn't affect them
And it
anymore.
wouldn't affect them. But, like, they're literally not doing anything incorrectly.
Right.
I don't understand why this is such a big secret, aside from the fact... And it harms everyone, even the Arab investors, if the dollar tanks right now, because they haven't gotten their money out yet.
That's part of the problem with the ending of this film, is that people aren't operating in their best interest. People who should know better.
Yeah, okay. All right. I guess I'm not missing anything. It's just not...
Yeah,
either not spelled out properly or it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the ending falls apart.
We see Hubbell step out of another taxi outside the event he decided to skip tonight in search of Lee. The band is playing an instrumental version of The Very Thought of You, which we've heard like 12 times so far on the podcast, an early 80s standard of upper-class gatherings. We cut to a bathroom where a second man in the same uniform as Lee's chauffeur comes out of the men's room, and we zoom into blood pooling out from under a door to the supply closet within. Hubbell finds Lee on the dance floor and interrogates her about the 21214 account. When she accuses him of working for the Arab investors, he realizes how mixed up her version of the story is, and he tells her they need to leave this party now. He puts her in her own car to send her home, but when the driver peels out, Hubbell realizes it's not her normal chauffeur. He urges her to jump out of the car before it gets going too fast, and she manages to. She dives out of this car into the street. Only now does she believe that he's on her side. Emery wakes to a phone call from Sal Naftari and learns something that disappoints him, though we don't hear exactly what. Emery thinks that Hubbell and Lee would never make a move with the Arab investors without his approval, but apparently they have. The next day, the Arab investors pull all of their money out of Burrow and everywhere else. This part makes no sense.
Right.
Because this hurts them as much as it hurts everybody else.
Yeah.
With no liquidity, banks won't be able to pay out simple cash withdrawals to the common man, and the market will collapse. We cut to a montage of nightly news segments about riots outside banks as customers are refused access to their own money.
Dollars, pounds, marks, francs, yen. Not one currency escaped. This scene outside a Manhattan bank was duplicated all over the world as people saw their life savings become worthless in a matter of hours.
Worldwide protests swarm every country's capital, and the protests turn violent. The apparent moral of the story is that Emery and the shadowy cabal who control the world market are much better at it, and the supposed heroes of the story are indirectly mass murderers. We cut to Emery's office, where he appears to be watching the riots on a television, but a reverse angle reveals he's actually shot himself in front of this TV and is sitting here dead.
Yeah. Again, I don't know why.
Because he doesn't have money anymore, because nobody does.
I mean, but then how does he have an office?
Because it just happened today.
Well, that's the other thing that really bothers me about this whole sequence, because it's not clear that they're having all of these reports on the television as if this is the next day, days later, weeks later, all of these riots are happening. They wouldn't happen instantaneously and be able to be on the news that same very night.
No, it would probably happen within the first week, though, that banks would start refusing people withdrawals.
Sure.
Within the first week, but this makes it seem like, so with the news reports, like you were saying, I thought weeks, maybe even months had passed.
Yeah.
And I was like, now you've killed yourself?
Well, I think he's just killed himself because his money is worthless. He's the same as any other person on the street now. He can't pay a person to drive him anywhere. He can't buy gasoline to get from one place to another, because none of that stuff is available anymore, because there's no money in the world.
Right.
And so how are the Arabs buying stuff?
They can't now. They pulled all their money. They're fucked as much as everybody else is.
Except for everything that they've already put into gold. Into that
but
account.
A farmer's not going to give you vegetables in exchange for gold if the whole country's in
they
ruin.
will, because that's the only currency that has a physical backing.
But it's not worth anything if you have food.
Can't eat the gold.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I know.
I mean, you can. It's just not. It's not great. You got to season it. We see the staff of Burrow all watching the news in their office, and then a 360 view of the office all closed up with blankets over the computers. Hubbell is here alone after hours, and Lee arrives to see him. They discuss looking for a way to start over, and we fade to black for credits to roll.
And again, if this is days, weeks, months later, why are these guys still going into work?
Yeah, why did they put blankets over the computers? Just come back and work here
this
eventually.
Is worthless. Yeah,
It's like, nah, we'll be back here next week or next month.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm so glad that this movie ended with the rich white people being okay because I was so concerned. Meanwhile, like we're seeing like
they're
all
gonna
these...
get eaten on their way home from work today, so they're not okay.
Yeah, it's like we're seeing all these news reports of just like fires in the streets, and it's just like she's wearing pearls, and it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I did notice the pearl necklace. I was like, really? You're going to wear that? Like, you're going to get mauled to death on the sidewalk outside this building.
The second they walk outside, it's going to be Escape from New York. Right?
They got to dress down. They got to be in rags when they come out.
Well, I mean, because you look at like The Big Short when they're walking through all the empty offices and people have like spray painted stuff on the walls. It's like I feel like they just like calmly shut down their stuff and left. Although I love that 360 shot. I don't know how they did it.
Oh, because it's a single shot where everyone's in it and then everything's shut down with the tarps on it.
Yeah, I was like, that's pretty. Like, I don't know how they got that stuff moved around so quickly unless there was some kind of.
There must have been a seam somewhere, but they did a nice fade on it.
But I was just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to take away from this, that they're going to be okay when they're definitely not going to be okay.
The whole point of this last montage is that no one is going to be okay.
Yeah.
That the world is in cinders now. And that everything that Emery said would happen is going to happen because they didn't listen to him.
But they're okay. They're smiling and happy at the end. That's so good.
Except Kristofferson still looks so weird.
Without the beard.
I know. I was thinking, like, why didn't he look so weird in Heaven's Gate? And then I remembered it was the beard.
Mm-hmm.
Without the beard, his head is just such a strange shape. It looks like a state somehow. I don't know how to explain that.
Got some sharp edges, I think. Yeah.
Some peninsulas.
A couple of Great Lakes.
His eyes are pools. Yeah, so that's Rollover. They thought this would be a blockbuster.
Because it's so uplifting. But
what's weird is that they do play it off like it's a happy ending, like it's the end of All the President's Men, and these two people really showed it to the system.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, they got everybody fucking killed.
They destroyed the system.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's good a few generations down the line, but right now it's terrible that they did that.
Yeah, it's also, again, all the financial jargon and back and forth, and like it's like, I know, like, I'm getting context clues that what's happening is bad.
Yeah,
like they're not depositing this money, and that's really bad. It's like, oh no, and they're here all night because.
But yeah, it's all tell don't show at the end.
Yeah,
it's very anticlimactic in the same way as All the President's Men, where you're just like, then the president resigned. Then this happened. Then this happened. You're like, that's fucking boring. I want to see it. I want to see these people crying behind the scenes. Like, show me the characters in this movie reacting to this.
So that's why Trading Places climax is so much more entertaining.
Yeah.
They're in the stockroom. They're yelling at stuff, and you got Ralph Bellamy and Don Amici like flipping out about what's happening. It's such a... And again, I had to read a whole like huge documentation about what the ending of Trading Places, what was happening.
Yeah.
Because I do not know what's happening.
I feel like that one's a real masterclass in like stock and like learning stuff. Like, especially when they first bring Eddie Murphy in and he like kind of lectures all of them on, if you don't understand the market, then you can't predict what it's going to do. But there's some smart writing there. But I feel like this one was more like I think it was trying to be All the President's Men about the stock market with a fictional story. And then the ending is so anticlimactic that they just didn't know what to do with it. So they're like, what should Hume Cronyn do? Doesn't matter. He kills himself. What about the other two characters? They'll just be like, what do we do now? We'll just have a scene where they just say, what do we do now for 5 minutes.
Okay, now correct me if I'm wrong. Lee never actually figures out what's going on.
No.
She just knows that they have an account and they're withdrawing a bunch of money, and it's secret.
Also, when she reaches out to Sal Naftari, she's not trying to like put the kibosh on this whole system.
Correct.
She's literally just trying to go through with her deal buying the Spanish chemical company without her shares of stock on the chopping block anymore. It's like, you're just being as corrupt as everybody else in this system.
And had they not tried to kill her, everything probably would have been fine.
Right.
Like, them taking that step to try to murder her is what drives her forward.
Yeah.
It's like, just don't take her company. You're going to make $1 billion.
Yeah.
Why are you...
why are you not playing ball?
Yeah.
I don't understand. You've done it so far. Why did you marry a billionaire if you didn't want $1 billion? Billionaires aren't fun people to be married to. Sorry, billionaire listeners. By the way, we have a Patreon.
In the 500 million tier.
I'll start saying nice things about billionaires. never do that. Where is this? I mean, thumbs down for me.
Yeah, it's a thumbs down.
It's a thumbs down.
Where is this going letterboxed for you guys?
I have it at 127 out of 170 for the year. It is below Final Exam and above Tarzan the Ape Man.
All right. Richard.
I keep thinking about moving it, but then I'm looking at stuff that's below. I was like, no, because I don't have it that low. I think
you're mad at yourself for not having it lower.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this isn't a good movie, but then I looked at the movie below. It's like, oh,
that's definitely worse.
That's definitely worse. To me, anyway. So I have it at 69.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? Because it's below True Confessions, but above Prince of the City. I didn't like Prince of the City at all.
I get that.
Because then it's like Carbon Copy, Paternity. It's like, oh man, those are all way worse.
I liked Carbon Copy. But that's my problem. I have it at 150, which is just under So Fine and just above Hard Country.
I'll regret my placement later. But it's just like, I'm just looking down the list.
Right now, I'm very happy with it.
It's like no, I'd rather watch this movie than any of these other movies.
You really hate horror movies, so I think that packs the bottom of your list with movies you never want to watch.
Yeah.
It's true.
Our director here was Alan J. Pakula. He previously directed Klute, The Parallax View, All the President's Men, and Starting Over. After this, he's back next season with Sophie's Choice and later The Pelican Brief and The Devil's Own. He also has 3 Oscar nominations, including one for producing To Kill a Mockingbird. The story here came from Howard Kohn. He was a Rolling Stone reporter with no other writing credits on IMDb. There was a story and writing credit for David Shaber. We previously heard his writing in The Warriors, Those Lips, Those Eyes, and Nighthawks, and later he goes uncredited for work on the screenplay to The Hunt for Red October. And another story credit for David Weir, Just This, I think. The music here came from Michael Small. He's a regular Pakula composer, having worked on Klute and The Parallax View. So far on the show, he scored Night Moves, Those Lips, Those Eyes, Postman Always Rings Twice, and Continental Divide. And he also scores Stepford Wives, Marathon Man, and Jaws the Revenge. And I think, Jess, you even commented during the film about how it sounded very TV movie, the score.
Oh my God, the score was horrible.
It gets a little bit saturated and goofy and a little bit too telegraphy in places.
Oh yeah.
The cinematographer is Guglielmo Garrone. This is his first American cinematographer credit. He previously worked in the camera department on All That Jazz. The cinematographer was Giuseppe Rotunno. He was the cinematographer on All That Jazz, and so far on the show, Popeye. Later, he lights Red Sonja, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, Wolf, and the Sabrina remake. The editor here was Evan A. Lotman. He previously cut Panic in Needle Park, The Exorcist, and so far on the show, Honeysuckle Rose. Later, he cuts Sophie's Choice, Muppets Take Manhattan, and Maximum Overdrive. Jane Fonda played Lee Winters. She was Cat Ballou in Cat Ballou, Corey Bratter in Barefoot in the Park, Barbarella in Barbarella, and Gloria in They Shoot Horses, Don't They? She's also in Fun with Dick and Jane and The China Syndrome. We've seen her so far in 9 to 5 and just recently in On Golden Pond with her father. She had previously won an Oscar for her part in the Pakula-directed Klute, and more recently reunited with Pakula in Comes a Horseman in 78. Her most recent credit is as Grandmama in Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken. Kris Kristofferson played Hubbell Smith. He was Whistler in the Blade movies, Bronson in Payback, Mace Montana in Big Top Pee-wee, and the 76 A Star is Born. We saw him last in Heaven's Gate, which alongside this did so poorly that he focused more on his music career after that. He was nominated for a Golden Raspberry for a combination of both roles, but lost to Clinton Spilsbury, the Lone Ranger. He later scored an Oscar nomination for Original Song in 1985's Songwriter. Hume Cronyn played Maxwell Emery. He was also in Brewster's Millions as Rupert Horn. He appears in Cocoon, Cocoon 2, Batteries Not Included, The World According to Garp, and so far on the show Honky Tonk Freeway, all of which also feature his wife Jessica Tandy. He had worked with Pakula previously for The Parallax View and comes back later for The Pelican Brief. He also has an Oscar nomination for his part in 1945's The Seventh Cross, and we saw him last in a Patreon pick review of Hitchcock's Lifeboat. Josef Sommer played Roy Lefcourt. We saw his first role as Rothko in Dirty Harry. Later, he's Palmer Strickland in Strange Days and the President in X-Men The Last Stand. He worked again with Pakula the next year as a narrator in Sophie's Choice. Bob Gunton played Sal Naftari. This is his first film. Later he shows up in Glory and JFK, but I'd guess he's most recognizable as Warden Norton in The Shawshank Redemption. Most recently, he stood in for Harold Ramis for scenes in Ghostbusters Afterlife that Egon's likeness was deep-faked over.
Really?
Yeah, he was Harold Ramis in all the scenes where you have a body there.
You know, I have to say, they did a lot of really interesting things in Afterlife that
Did
I
they?
liked. Like Olivia Wilde as Gozer, but then Shohreh Aghdashloo as Gozer's voice.
Oh, that makes sense.
And I was like, yeah, because she don't have to do anything. Her voice is already
perfect.
Gozer's voice.
Macon McCalman played Jerry Fewster. We previously covered his first film appearance as Deputy Queen in Deliverance, and more recently in The Incredible Shrinking Woman, Dead and Buried, and Carbon Copy. He's also Mr. B in Smokey and the Bandit, and Carl Parker in The Concorde, Airport 79. Ron Frazier played Gil Hovey. This is his fourth film, and we've covered them all so far. Brubaker, It's My Turn, and Honky Tonk Freeway. He's back next season for The World According to Garp. Jodi Long played Betsy Okamoto. This was her first film. Later she shows up as reporters in Splash and Born on the 4th of July, and further roles in Exorcist 3, Beginners, and more recently in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Crocker Nevin played Warner Ackerman. He was Zur in The Last Starfighter. Martha Plimpton played Fewster's older daughter. Did you see her in there?
Yeah. Because they focus on a couple, like there's two of them.
Was she sitting at the breakfast table?
Yeah. And I was like, I think that's her.
Yeah, I didn't realize it the first time I watched it, and I was like, I'm going to look for Martha Plimpton this time, and she's sitting there at the table.
Yeah, I mean, I always looked through the cast before.
Yeah.
And so it's, Martha Plimpton. I was like, and so I'm like really looking, but kids, sometimes it's harder to tell.
Yeah. Later she shows up in The Goonies, Parenthood, Josh and SAM, and 88 episodes of Raising Hope, including one with me. She also provides the voice of Yelena in Frozen 2. I also recently... Who is her dad?
Mr. Plimpton?
No, it's not. It's one of the Carradine brothers.
Oh. Yeah.
I think it's... Is it Keith? Keith Carradine is her dad?
That sounds right.
I was just reading that recently, and I was like, how have I never heard that Martha Plimpton was a Carradine?
Keith.
Yeah, Keith Carradine is her father. And I think her uncle is Bill Plimpton, the animator. Ira Lewis played Traitor. He was Hitler in Bob Clark's Loose Cannons. Robert Dada played Crowd, uncredited. He was Santa Claus in 3 Days of the Condor. Garetta, banquet party scene, uncredited. She was Rosemary in Demons, and Coster in Bruno Mattei's Terminator 2. And Jerry Hewitt was crowd member, uncredited, and he's one of the lead baseball furies with the face paint in The Warriors. I think that's everything for Rollover. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, you can find all our socials at linktree/vintagevideopod. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be discussing Absence of Malice, which IMDb describes like so. When a prosecutor leaks to a Miami reporter that a liquor wholesaler is suspected in the murder of a union head, the man's life begins to unravel. We leave you now with the trailer for Absence of Malice.
Here comes our boy, Michael Colin Gallagher.
Are we investigating Gallagher?
I want to know every nickel he's got and how he got it.
You're talking to a newspaper right now. Do you understand? You can't write this. It's murder.
Suspected in the murder of Joey Diaz. We don't
Kidnapped.
have to say
No
that.
murder, no body.
Presumed murder, then. You're missing 6 months, you're dead.
We have no knowledge the story is false, therefore we're absent malice.
The story is true.
We may say whatever we like about Mr. Gallagher, and he is powerless to do us harm.
You don't want to have anything to do with Mike Gallagher.
You're gonna bust it?
I'm Michael Gallagher. Want to know where the story came from?
Suppose you picked up this morning's newspaper and your life was a front-page headline. Everything they said was accurate, but none of it was true.
That stuff in the paper, that's not true. You know that.
All I know is what you read in the damn newspapers.
Mr. Gallagher, this is Megan Carter from the Standard. Don't expect the truth unless you're willing to tell it.
I just need you to get to know me fast. You say somebody's guilty, everybody believes you. You say he's innocent, nobody cares.
I know how to print what's true, and I know how not to hurt people. I don't know how to do both at the same time, and neither do you.
You want to know the truth? Okay, you want to ask me as a person? I'll tell you. You ask me as a reporter, I got no comment.
Paul Newman, Sally Field.
I'm free every night but Friday.
How about Friday?
Okay.
picked up a newspaper, and there it is for everybody to see.
She writes the story that sets him up. He writes the book on getting even. Absence of Malice.